All right. My name is John Foreman,
I'm Dhruv Kanchi.
And I'm Mehta.
and we did our research project on education and fitness/nutrition.
So my topic is nutrition and its impact on students' education and study habits.
I did my topic on online education with the recent coronavirus pandemic, its impact on students, and the need for students to get out and get some physical activity.
And my research was centered around the correlation between college athletics and their influence on a student's ability to manage stress both academically and athletically and turn their hectic schedule into one that is successful.
So the question that I want to answer is whether or not nutrition has an effect on academic performance. This question is important because research on this topic can help schools better understand and in turn provide more nutritious food options to help students perform better. And what will be covered in my section of the presentation, how nutrition does affect education and methods of change to create better food options in schools. So how nutrition affects education. Uh, David Just, who is the writer of an article regarding healthy food choices in schools, says that a balanced diet with fats, proteins, complex carbohydrates, and fiber can directly give students an advantage and make them more prepared to learn compared to meals with minimal macronutrients and empty calories. Unhealthy foods can slow down body processes. According to Grace Chen, who is a writer from thepublicschoolreview.com, she claims that not only do nutritional foods stimulate academic performance, but unhealthy eating can actually hinder it. She explains how a post-food sugar crash occurs where the glucose intake in the body is too high and therefore shuts down typical bodily processes. And lastly, high levels of saturated fat can impair learning and memory. Chen also explains that high levels of saturated fat can ultimately hinder students' ability to retain important information and thus affecting their grades in the end. So how schools can change for this need. Stevens has a survey about their dining experience that most of us took in the past few weeks. And I believe that many other schools across the country should highly consider administering a similar survey because it gives schools and institutions a chance to see what students think about how nutritious and beneficial their food choices are. And based on the responses, alter their dining programs. And a program that's in talks right now is the Healthy Schools program, which is a program that will implement various new actions to create a healthier school environment for public and private schools across the country. And schools will be banning some unhealthy foods and adding more nutritious ones, having students leave cafeterias less hungry and more energized and motivated to work. And my individual takeaway on this topic is that more research and surveying will need to be done if a change is going to happen. Many people undermine the importance of this topic when in reality, some simple tweaks in the dining halls of schools can go a long way. And a change is simply needed to help schools perform better. More programs are being taken into initiative as we speak, and these programs should continue in order to make an improvement in student study habits.
Online schooling and its effect on education was my research topic. I chose this due to the current issue with coronavirus pandemic and students going to online school where they may not get as much physical daily activity. So I looked at the question whether or not there was a need for schools and students to work together to increase daily physical activity. Some people may think that it's not as important of an issue where schools don't need to focus on it. So I looked into that issue. It's obviously very important because it's the health of the students. So they need to get physical activity in every day and not just sit in the dorm room on the computer for 7 to 8 hours straight doing homework. It's very important to get outside. My major points of my presentation will talk about the negative impact of online schooling, specifically obesity, physical development, and sleep deprivation. Schools' response to the pandemic, what they chose to do, whether they added classes to increase physical activity or took away classes that maybe were unnecessary, or if they're talking to the students at all and just letting everyone know how important it is to get outside and get physical activity. Also, some interviews that I conducted and the firsthand responses from students. I interviewed students from Stevens Institute of Technology, Villanova University, and many other colleges, just getting different perspectives from different places and seeing what they think about this issue. The need for a solution / possible solutions. This goes into the interviews and some possible solutions that I got from the interviews and whether or not they thought it was important enough of an issue for schools to maybe implement a class or something. Also, different students in different situations, specifically time zones. Students in different countries might have to wake up super early, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. for classes, and that completely throws off your sleep schedule. So this key finding was the correlation between technology usage and obesity / physical development. It was found in a study in 2013 by researcher Strasberg that technology in a bedroom led to overweight in children by 31%. And that's a very important study right there, because obviously if you go to online school, students are going to be on the computer a lot more, in the room a lot more. And if technology in the bedroom is directly impacting students where they become overweight by 31%, the numbers are going to increase even more than that if students are always on the computer and on technology. Also, it was found by another study by Rowan University that physical development is delayed when technology is used more by children, because their sensory and motor systems are not adapted to the nature of technology, so it slows down all their developmental skills. Another key finding was the correlation between technology usage and sleep deprivation. This is what I was talking about with students in different time zones where they have to wake up super early, and it'll throw off their sleep schedule, how they function throughout the day, their production in school, and how efficiently they work. And they'll just be miserable all day if they're tired all the time. So there has to be a possible solution to come up with to fix that problem. I know some classes, they just record for the students and the students can watch whenever, but some classes aren't like that, where they will have to join and throw off their sleep schedule. A sleep scientist at Google named Matthew Walker, he talked about how students are sacrificing their sleep schedule, and that can greatly affect their learning outcome. Lastly, another key finding I found was from the interviews I conducted, the firsthand experiences and thoughts from students on the situation. I got responses ranging from students who don't go outside the dorm whatsoever. They're not motivated at all, not eating well, just sitting on the computer all day, 7 hours a day, just doing homework. And that's obviously very unhealthy, and that just can't be happening. And then another response I got was one student made it his priority, even over learning, to get outside, get physical activity, and run. So it's really up to the student to be responsible, but it would also help more if the school got involved. Key findings, how did schools handle the situation? Did they implement classes? Did they take away classes? It seems to me that a lot of schools took away the physical education classes, and they didn't find it important at all. to get physical education in when it's actually very accessible. Students could do at-home workouts, in the dorm workouts, push-ups. If schools made it mandatory, it would be much easier on the students and much more motivating for the students. Just final takeaways / conclusions. Changes do definitely need to be made to students' physical activity levels so they stay healthy, and especially during when there's a disease going around, to stay healthy and be resistant to the disease if they get it. It would obviously help much more if the schools let them know how important this was. If they talked about it more, got it in their mind more, then students would be more likely to go out and get physical activity.
So the research question that I based my proposal on was, how does participation in college athletics affect a student's mental health and academic performance? And the reason why I thought this was worthy of being thought about and looked into was because of the fact that I just know that student athletes are more likely to have a difficult time managing the stretches of their schedule than the average student. And after researching about this topic, I definitely found out that this initial hypothesis I had was true. So a few major points that I'll address is a primary problem for student athletes is the cumulative stress from their hectic schedules that they go about on a day-to-day basis. The reality of the situation is that student athletes are working under an entirely different set of circumstances than other students, and it makes succeeding in academics and athletics all the more challenging. One key piece of evidence I'll use is an interview I conducted with my friend Stevens Institute of Technology athlete Dhavan Antala. Dhavan is a runner for Stevens, and he's been running for the first semester, and he's been a runner throughout his years in high school. So he has a lot of experience as a student athlete. And another key thing that Dhavan stressed was the importance of time management. And he noticed that as he became a student athlete, he realized that he was being put into a situation where he didn't have much time to relax, and the time that he had became all the more valuable. And while Dhawan has been able to manage his time well, that's not something that every single student athlete will be able to do. And this leaves them prone to mental health issues and problems. And these problems can snowball and gradually culminate in an even larger problem, which means that college administrations, teachers, and coaches have to take action and help their student athletes succeed on and off the field. So as I had mentioned before, this is one of the things that I really found, and what a key takeaway that I had from my interview with Dhawan was the weight and the value of a balanced schedule. And what I mean by that is that as Dhawan became a high school student, he realized that working and managing his time was becoming more important. And when he got to college, he realized that his time was becoming even more valuable, and that he just didn't have time to manage this to be able to commit to some of the same free time activities that he had in the past because of the challenging engineering courses and the hectic running schedule that he had to meet from his coaches. So it's become clear that there's an increased prevalence of mental health issues, particularly among young adults. According to the World Health Organization, 5.9% of US citizens are currently dealing with a mental health issue. And when you couple this with the fact that 13.1% of 18 to 25-year-olds have had a major depressive episode since the year 2017, it's clear that these student athletes are being put in a vulnerable position because of the challenging lives that they lead, and the fact that they don't have much time to relax and take that break from this challenging and the challenging aspects and the stresses of your everyday life. And that definitely makes managing their day-to-day lives much harder. Obviously, the primary role of any student athlete comes in the first part of that phrase, the student. And student athletes are told that their number one job is to learn in the classroom and do well on their homeworks, tests, and quizzes and projects. But the reality of the situation is that they're being put in a tough spot because of the fact that they have so many things to do, and they get tired, and they have so much more of a rigorous schedule that it's difficult for them to complete their day-to-day activities. And this and that's the stress of being unable to handle what you know you have to do can definitely lead to serious mental health disorders. And it's been shown that there's a correlation between these untreated mental health disorders and a decline in GPA. According to the National Library of Medicine, there's a 0.49 point drop on a 4-point scale when students have untreated medical health disorders. But the good news is that once these mental health disorders are treated with either medicine or with by talking to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, there's definitely evidence that when these mental health disorders are treated, GPA can continue to rise back to where the students want it to be. Finally, the reality of the situation is that when mental health issues are ignored, the ramifications of doing this are really significant. According to the U.S. Library of Health, 477 NCAA athletes have died since 2017, and 35 of these deaths have been suicide, indicating that there is a real connection between a lack of time and the stress that a student athlete has faced, and the fact that sometimes these issues can get so out of hand that a student athlete would take its own life. And ultimately, that's something that we need, that the educational and athletic communities need to make sure just doesn't happen. And that's one of the things that student athletes have to be able to succeed in, because of the fact that their coaches need to do a better job of instilling a more positive environment for them. So overall, as I had mentioned before, student athletes have a difficult schedule to manage, and their day-to-day lives are much more difficult and just stressful than their average peers who are only managing academic commitments. The mental health issues can easily snowball and culminate in a larger problem that's more difficult to address. And schools need to do a better job of implementing policies that help these student athletes succeed academically. For example, some things that schools can do is extended due dates for students, athletes who have major athletic events coming up, which will just give them more time to be able to hand in their best work. Extended time on tests, similar to policies that the College Board has implemented on tests like the SATs and the ACTs, because of the fact that these students are dealing with a different set of circumstances than the average student, and they should be able to deal with this, or they should be able to the playing field should be even, and that is a good way of doing that. And finally, schools, particularly coaches, need to do a good job of developing and creating a positive and healthy culture for their student athletes, where they can feel like they can come in and be friends with their teammates and coaches. And this is even more important with the COVID-19 pandemic going on right now. So that was our project. Please let us know if you have any questions. Thanks for listening.